at this point. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you. Hopefully you enjoyed our little back and forth conversation here, but I know several of you have joined us. My name is Jeff Kikel. I am the president of BK Wealth Consulting and also the CEO of T-Works Co-working. We are, like I said, this is the Austin Top Guns Q4 Planning for 2022 event. This is the first of a series of webinars that we will do with panelists, different members of our group, different people that we know, and we really felt like this was the first time we wanted to do something like this right here at the end of the year and help people start to think about planning for 2022 now, instead of what most people do, which is they get through 2021 and then they start planning for 2022 in January. And you're already a month behind, basically, at that point. So today we have several panelists. First off, my co-host, Richard Fowler, is the other co-host of our Austin Top Guns LinkedIn group. We have about 3,800 members across the way. I'll let Richard introduce himself. We have Tom Bargsley, CPA and unbelievable tax strategist. Pete Monfre, who is one of the best marketers I know and marketing strategist. And then Tanner O'Brien with Action Coach, where you're going to learn a little bit about, kind of planning for the growth of your company. So what I'll do right now, and then myself, I'll be talking about the benefit side of things with my world of BK Wealth and BK Benefits. So Richard.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Richard Fowler, Realty Austin, with expertise in farm and ranch and residential real estate. We started having a discussion about this early on, and we kind of laughed about the fact that we all get into this time of the year and start realizing that we need to plan for next year, but we end up somehow waiting until the last minute to plan because we're all focused on our business and running our businesses. So Jeff and I talked about putting this together, and we thought a good panel discussion would be great about that. So we invited these experts in their areas to focus on that, talk a little bit about that. And so let's get started. I'll turn it over to Tanner a little bit. He's going to tell us about who he is, his business approach, and what he recommends for 2022.
Excellent. Well, thanks, sir. Welcome, everybody. I am Tanner O'Brien. I am the co-owner and chief operating officer and a business coach with Action Coach here in Williamson County. For those of you that don't know, Action Coach is a global franchise business coaching franchise, and my father and I are business partners in our local firm here in Williamson County. My dad has been with Action Coach for about 10 years. I always like to share that because there's a lot of knowledge and expertise that comes from just being in the business for that long. I had the opportunity to join the firm a little over a year ago now to really build and work with business owners as we move forward. So planning for 2022, very, very important to do, especially from a business standpoint. There's a couple of things that really come to mind when it comes to planning or preparing to plan at this particular point. First is, as it's already been mentioned, start planning now. Start looking at what this next year looks like. Don't wait till January to start thinking, oh, what does 2022 need to look like? And what is that process, or what should that process start to look like? I like to look at it in kind of two different components. The first one being kind of this November, moving into December standpoint, starting to work on analysis, alignment, and then activity. Analysis, what went well this last year? What things did we accomplish? Where are we at today versus where we were a year ago, or even last quarter, 2 quarters ago? What things can we celebrate? What things do we want to continue to move forward with? And then what do we need to change next time? What do we need to look at that maybe didn't go the way we wanted it to? We need to start focusing on making those changes moving forward into 2022. This is a great time to start doing a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Doing that each year at the end of the year to start planning is a great tool to utilize in this process. It's really the analysis side of things. And then I like to talk about alignment. Alignment really, do you know where you're going? Has that changed? So as you move through the year, through the course of anything, we need to be thinking, what was the long-term goal of why we got into business for ourselves in the first place? 10-year goals, 5-year goals, 3-year goals, where are we at in alignment with those? And how does that shift our perspective for this next year? what has happened that we need to now shift and adapt so that we're still on track for those long-term goals. So alignment becomes a very important component of the process at the end of the year. And then it becomes activity. What are the activities, what are the tasks that we need to be doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis? It's going to continue to move us forward. What are the check marks that we need to hit, the checkpoints we need to hit each quarter, each month in order to keep us on track for the next year? So utilizing the next couple months to start that part of the planning process is really where I recommend and start working with a lot of our clients on. Now, one additional piece to this is, what about after the holidays? We tend to get through this process and we get the planning done, and it's a lot of fun to get excited for this next year. And then we move into the holidays, and oftentimes what we see, January 1st comes around and it's a little sluggish to get things going. So setting a time now in January, that first week, that second week, where we can start putting on the calendar, hey, I'm going to take a half day to refresh on my goals for this next year, the activities that we need to do, so we can start to become accountable for what we need to accomplish this year. Not just responsible, but starting to take that accountability to what actually needs to take place. So a couple nuggets in there in terms of what I recommend from a planning standpoint, but having that time, we take that reflection, start building big picture for the year towards the end of this year, and have a bit of a refresh that's going to set you up for that first quarter once you get into January. So it's kind of a two-part piece. It's going to give you the best boost in momentum moving forward.
Thank you, Tanner. Appreciate that. Pete, and kind of tackle on top of that, or
Sure.
as far as a sales and marketing perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the things that you talked about they also happen in the marketing planning process. And so, I'm just going to break the news to everybody. How many companies actually have gone through a deliberate marketing planning process to begin with, right? So you're used to planning every other part of your business. Like you were saying, you're planning, all these things, even sales plans, marketing. And it's kind of strange because I think it's partially the industry's fault. There's a lot of fingers to point as to how marketing got to this point, but at some point, the requirements that we put on finance to come to the meeting and bring what their plan to the meeting, and the requirements we put on operations bring their plan to the meeting, the big meeting, right? And here comes marketing, and they've been drinking tequila all day, right? And they're shooting guns in the air, and they come in and they're like, cows with sunglasses. And we accept that. Like, that's kind of like those are the marketing guys. Like, how did they get off the hook for doing real planning? And in a real world context, what that looks like is marketing with discussion during that planning process would look like this. Well, we're doing SEO and we're working on the website, and we're gonna start maybe sending a few emails, and everybody kind of work their LinkedIn, right? Sound like a good marketing plan? Everybody's like, that's a great marketing plan.
Raise your hand.
Some of the people, are like, I don't even know what SEO is, right?
But it sounds good.
They're on board though, right? And to be less facetious, it's this focus on tactics. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're charging, right? We're charging ahead. We're doing this thing. We're doing that thing. And really, I think it's funny. Should I tell this to the audience? I wasn't sure what we were talking about today, other than just a basic idea. And what was funny is when we just all sat down, we're all thinking exactly the same thing. And guess what it is? It's hold up a second, take a step back, which is pretty counterintuitive, right? Because I don't know if your business changed over the last 2 years, but mine did. And the instinct, I own Clarity Marketing Support, and I'm also the owner of a design production studio called Heidi Designs. And we've been doing this for 30 years. We've been self-employed for 30 years. You develop an instinct of a bull. You charge, right? And so it's pretty counterintuitive to be like, hold up, right? Now, I'm not saying stop everything you're doing, although maybe some of the things you should probably stop, but we are saying you need to look at, like people, and I'll leave it with this point. I don't want to be too critical, but this is a constant in my world. People talk about metrics, right? They talk about metrics. Ask what their metrics are and you'll see how much they actually are implementing a system to track metrics.
Right.
And if the rare one has, can say, well, here's how we do it, right? I mean, it could range from, well, we just ask everybody that calls where they heard from us. Well, that's a great start, right? But that's not even close. Or what are your objectives? And I'm looking for a number over a period of time, right? If it's not that specific, you're really not doing it, right? So we talk a lot about metrics and which metrics and all these metrics, and then there's vanity metrics that make people feel good. But very few companies, and I'm talking companies from 3 to even $100 million companies, do not have a clear idea of what they mean when they use these terms, right? But they check them off the box,
Right.
because somehow marketing is this black box, and they just kind of go with the purple-haired guys.
And they may not even know in the same company, they may be evaluating the metrics differently. And so when they're talking.
In different parts of this, right, so then they're talking in different languages.
Exactly.
And I think the other, and I'll leave this with a slam to the younger generation. The other part is the marketing people have gotten younger and younger and younger. Like, we think that it's the domain of the young people because it has changed a lot. But let me just remind everybody, we invented it. All right, so, but I think it's partly a cultural thing. It's harder to take, if you've got a bunch of older executives, it's harder to take the younger people serious, right? So I think these are like things that companies struggle with really all of the time. I think the COVID situation brought it to the surface more, where people are saying, we really have issues in demand generation. And I'm seeing positive movement where they're saying, we need to get it together, right? And they don't know what exactly it means, but they just know that they're just not hitting the numbers, and they're not sure why.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've seen like social media has got less and less effective.
Right,
And
and they keep
more
changing
expensive.
it, right?
Yeah.
Yep, and the new Apple update just destroyed Facebook's advertising model for most companies. It's changing constantly. I think if you're still doing marketing the way you were 5 years ago, and you haven't gone through a deliberate planning process since then, you're probably wasting so much money that you will love it if I come in and help you.
Well, and I think that goes to everything that we're all going through from a business owner standpoint. And so we have to, the ones that are going to be successful are the ones that are going to evaluate what we just went through and really take, focus on the things that are working and correct the ones that aren't. And it goes back to reading the metrics and everything that you're talking about.
And by the way, and I'll admit too, I'm guilty of some of these things too.
I think
We're a very small company, so I know the metrics I need to know. But I don't do a lot of tracking of minute metrics. Now, that might be maybe not appropriate for our size company, but we should have a general idea of it. And sometimes we don't because we're busy. Again, it's the charging thing, right?
Yeah.
And you got to put the brakes on it.
All right, well, I appreciate that, Pete. Tom, tell us a little bit about you and your focus for next year.
Thank you. Tom Bargsley, CPA. I work as a virtual CFO for principally small businesses. And my focus is on helping people build cash flow. Everything we talked about, the planning, the execution, without the cash flow, you have no fuel. And so people get to that late and go, wow, we got great plans, and we didn't prepare to get those funds. And so I think a cash flow analysis is critical, and it's not one that you chip and stone, but it's one that's movable. And if COVID shows anything, if you don't have a plan B, C, and D, you're already behind. You've got to be able to pivot. And so along with that, which is often overlooked, is if you don't mirror cash flow after income tax, you only get half the story. So even without any change in law that we could expect, understanding what the net number is, what cash you get to keep, lets you know what the owner has for return. What can you reinvest in? How can you pivot the business? Without that, you're working really sort of blind in that process. And it's overlooked. And if I ask people for a budget, it may be one that's kind of dog ears from the desk, that's old, I meant to update this. But if you can match a budget and plans, as we mentioned, with a cash flow analysis, it really is revealing about what those steps are to get to that point. And here's why. We're at a point in history where we have some historically low interest rates that we have not seen, both for a personal and a business level. Where we have banks that are sitting on cash that badly need to lend those. It's a great opportunity for you to look at all your debt and restructure or reduce the rates. And if you have a credit line, you should be asking for more before you need it. If you don't have one, get one. It's a great tool. It gives you peace of mind. It lets you pivot to some of these plans, because what I see is COVID has caused some businesses to completely fail, and the businesses that are surviving are gaining their market share. And so my clients have a problem of, I need more people, I need more material, I need more IT, I need more everything. So that's an opportunity, but without knowing that cash flow, you're really hoping you get there. And so your plans may not be able to be implemented because you don't have the capital available at that time. And so I think that will be a critical focus for me, along with your banking relationship. If the other thing I think it's taught us is, if you have not done a vendor analysis of every single business you do business with, shame on you. Okay. Now, if people fail to get orders, they got no phone calls returned, no communication. I mean, you need a backup plan. And this is not knocking your current vendors, but you need a backup. And this goes from the smallest businesses to the largest. All you got to do is look at someone trying to build a home and know the problem they have with that, because they relied on a single supply chain. And that leads us to our nemesis, which is inflation. So quit believing the government numbers that inflation is modest. We all know that's baloney. Okay. So try to hire someone, buy something, or get a part for something that's broken, and you will get a quick lesson in inflation even before you get to HEB and check out your grocery bill. Okay. So if you look at that, how does it affect your business? Do you want to let it happen to you and run over you, if you will, or do you want to react to that and actually do some planning, some thoughtful planning and thinking about pricing? Like Pete said, step back, take a breath. I mean, you can't double your prices at Saw, but your customers know what's happening. They see it. So you can either be, you use the planning, or you just be reactive and play whack-a-mole. I think we've got to look at pricing strategies, period, because the old way, if you're using the pricing strategy of 5 years ago, you probably didn't make it. That's what happened. So I would strongly consider looking at your pricing strategy and talking with your key people. If you don't have marketing involved with that pricing strategy, you missed something. You need operations. You need everyone, HR. You need people to do this. So those are the real hot button issues I see. Cash flow, particularly looking at your vendors and what that impact is, and inflation, because it's going to definitely impact your performance. And if you got anything to do with real estate in your business, you need to check your leases and what your needs are now, because we've got change coming there. And we're at the beginning part, in my opinion, not the end part. So make sure you've got your house in order, if you will, your location. If you need less space, talk about that. And that's a plan that everyone gets involved with. If you need more space, there might be some opportunities at this point. So that would be a quick overview from me. But again, get a cash flow analysis and really think about how to use that. It could be a real tool to help you boost your business.
I had to laugh when you started talking about supply chain disruption and stuff like that. I mean, I live with that daily with my clients and trying to manage through what the builders are. And honestly, some of the letters that I get, it's just like, okay, we had one painter, a national builder, we had one painting company that we bought all the paint from, and now we're having to diversify as we go forward. And I'm like, well, really? One painter? Okay. And I was like, wow. So it makes for some very interesting conversations with my clients. And when you start looking at building a house and you're talking 18 months plus to get a house, it's crazy to start having those conversations.
I don't think it could be understated. It's a shortage of components, which leads to the shortage of the finished goods. Try to buy a freezer right now. You can't.
Yep.
Story, my son has an old car. He's a young man, so he has an old car, right? And old car, that's a big problem. It costs to fix more than the car is worth. And so, of course, we're like, time to buy a new old car, right?
Good
So
luck.
where we jump online, there's no cars to buy at this price range. This price range like under $5,000. It's literally nothing. Like, I don't know. I've never experienced this like on a huge site like Auto Trader, for example. No results within 100 miles. Okay, so I don't think 6 months ago we could have planned for that. I think now it's obvious. Like, if you have goods coming by shipping containers, you have a sense of it. the numbers will be insane. It's still a huge problem, but at least now you have a basis where you can say, what does it look like? And unfortunately for so many companies, what it looks like is quitting, stopping, because it is impossible for some companies. And then now you get pivoting. And I want to hit on one other thing you said, customers. Guess where all the answers are. And so if you're not doing customer research, whether that means just having lunch with a few of your customers or getting an objective third party to do actual customer research, you will learn everything that you need to know to move forward from that.
If you're not talking to your customers and your clients, then you're missing the boat too, along with everything else we're talking about here.
Right.
So,
And I'm saying, talk to them in a structured research methodology. And that's, again, it's like, I sound so academic, but you can talk to a lot of customers, but unless you're able to correlate that data and turn it into intelligence, and that requires, the right structure of the survey and the way it's implemented. The other thing is having an anonymous or a third party talk to them, whether it's, I'm not trying to sell myself. This is just logic, right? Because a lot of customers are not going to tell you the most important things because we naturally, I don't want to hurt feelings, right? I want to be supportive, right? Some third party calls them up and they'll tell me stuff that they will never tell you. And those are actually the things that you need to hear. So,
well, it goes back to the
very
metrics.
relevant.
Goes back to the metrics you were talking about too, is if you're asking them the same questions so you can correlate with the answers that you're getting. If you don't do it strategically, then you just have lunch with somebody.
A lot of,
Well, and what
50
falls
different
under my
opinions.
world, I deal with benefits and, the most expensive things that you typically have on your budget are people and benefits. And, I think a lot of the companies that I'm seeing, we've sold more 401k plans and healthcare plans this year, startup plans, than I have ever sold in the history that I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Because they're trying to compete for people out there. And, we were talking about this before everything started. People are looking at it and it's the great resignation. I mean, if you tell me I've got to come back to the office, I'll just find another job someplace else. And, small companies to compete are having to build that in to their budgets of, we've got to be able to offer benefits. And, if you look at the surveys that are done of employees, the top 5 things they want, work flexibility is one right now, health insurance, retirement plans, dental, and then typically bonuses and things like that, which are always up at the top. So 2 of those are, if you're going to offer any benefits, healthcare, retirement are the things that you've got to do. And you've got to figure the best way to do it. And one of the things that I will tell people is you don't have to, there's what's called the BUCAs. It's basically Blue Cross, United Healthcare, Cigna, Anthem Healthcare. You're not stuck with those anymore. There's a lot of, one of the great things that's happened over the last several years is there's a lot of health insurance companies or health companies that have been created that are game changers. They're changing the way that health is delivered. They're changing the way that everything is out there. So, we've been working with a lot of clients that have been at the mercy of the BUCAs for the last several years where, it's almost a victim mentality. Every year I go in and, it's 60% more and you're requiring me to cover at least 50% of the cost for my employees, where we've got plans that are 40% less than what the BUCAs are and they have no rate increases. So we've been looking for these game changers that have been out there that are, coming up with better ideas. And I think
I can tell you from a realtor standpoint, we all run our small businesses ourselves. I can't tell you that, like the posts and things that light up about realtors asking how they can get insurance to cover things for their families and stuff like that. And for a while, everybody was taking classes at ACC or whatever, just so they could get insurance coverage. And, just trying to figure out ways to cover, take care of it.
And now there's alternatives, and it's how you consume healthcare. Now, if you've got some massive condition, you've got cancer, or you've got some kind of ongoing condition that consumes a lot of healthcare, probably the BUCA is going to be the best one in those cases. But, if you're reasonably healthy, and that doesn't mean that you have to be, pristine, a marathon runner. If you're reasonably healthy, there are wonderful alternatives that really focus more around keeping you healthy than letting you get sick and then fixing the problems afterwards, which is kind of our fee-for-service model.
Let me add to that from my side. So as you're talking about adding all those benefits or considering that, number one, the cost of turnover and onboarding is incredibly high. So you're lowering that cost. Number two, everything that Jeff mentioned, except for a few isolated things, are tax deductible to the owner. Three, they're not taxable to the employee. Those are wins on cash flow. So the first thing you're doing is you're reducing turnover, you're attracting good people, but you have trailing benefits that actually improves your cash flow. So yes, you're writing a check. Is it an expense or investment? I see that as an investment. And that's why you want to make a wise choice. But you're either going to compete in the market or let it run over you, because everyone wants the same good people. That's the same pool.
Sure.
This brings up a really big component of the planning for 2022, and that's team.
Yeah.
In general, I mean, how many business owners have each of us had conversations with? I know I've had plenty over the last even just 2 months on, Carol, I can't find team members, I can't keep them. That has been the biggest hurdle moving into this next year.
Sure.
And there's two components that I look at this. The first one is recruiting, the second is retaining and understanding leverage and marketing. And one question I ask a lot of business owners is, when you're recruiting, not just hiring, but actually recruiting good talent for your team, are you putting in the same level of marketing effort to recruit great team members as you do for your best clients?
I would say no.
Yeah. Yes, and that's the
The
surprising
common
answer.
yes,
Yes,
they're winging it,
and
yeah.
it's amazing when at the end of the day, your best customer is your team,
Yeah.
because they're the ones that take care of the customers, right?
There's an issue that's come up, and I can't remember where the story broke, but about the algorithms that deal with resumes that are rejecting, I think it's 80% of the best candidates.
I remember that when I was with a firm, I was hiring for positions that were very high paid financial positions. And even this was, this is now almost 8 years ago. And the algorithms, I'm like, we should be able to find a ton of people. There's very few competitors in Austin in the financial services industry that pay as well as we were and all this. I got exactly 2 candidates.
Yeah, and they're out there.
Yeah.
And it's bad for the employees, bad for the employees. The other thing is the unicorn job description.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, do you seriously? And so, I look at the different marketing jobs. A lot of my clients are trying to hire marketing people. And actually, these days, I'm saying consider virtual executives. I'm a virtual executive. If a marketing guy, I think in Austin, the average or the median salary plus benefits about $350,000 for a senior guy. You can buy that talent as a contractor. This is what happens. I don't want to get too down a rabbit hole here, but what happens is it takes a long time to hire somebody. They pay money to do that, right? They finally find that unicorn. Then it takes three months maybe to get that person gets up to speed, right? And then they start seeing if they're actually for real or not. And that goes on for another 2-3 months. Maybe they give them 6 months, right? A lot of time's passing, a lot of money being spent.
Sure.
And then they find out not the right person, right? One, because their expectations are probably a little nuts, but 2, because that's kind of normal with hiring people. So you start over. You're looking at job positions. They've been looking for 2 years, cycling through people, and they're hiring junior level people because they think they don't have enough budget. They're actually spending more money than they could have hired a pro, who, by the way, doesn't need any time to get up to speed. Comes with a plan ready to roll, and you'll be executing in about 60 days, okay, instead of 2 years from now. And I think COVID, again, it's just amplified the issues, right? Because maybe you had to lay off a bunch of people. Well, now is marketing a full-time job? And when you hire somebody, of course, miraculously, it becomes a full-time job, right? But it probably isn't. And so you can get more expertise for less money and still get the same results, or hopefully more, because you have more experience now. So all of these things are old problems that I think are now exacerbated by the circumstances.
One of my friends is a sales coach, and that's the way he put it. He's like, I come in for, let's call it 1 day a week, works with about 5 clients. He works 1 day with each of them. He's like, you hire a sales manager or a sales VP, all they do is screw stuff up the rest of the week. The salespeople just want to get out there and sell. The VP is constantly having to show that he's actually doing something or she's doing something. It's like, I come in one day a week, we organize it, we have a sales meeting, go out, go forth and sell, and then we'll talk about it next Monday.
Right, right, and if you have 5 clients, you learn how to do stuff real fast.
Yep.
You know, so it's a whole different environment than being an employee where, you know, you're gonna get that paycheck anyway. And so, you know, it may be self-serving, but I am always evangelizing, you know, give that a consideration, W-9 versus W-2. Chances are W-9 is gonna get you a lot more for your money, and you're gonna stop being so frustrated.
This goes right to the topic of plan, right? When it comes to, we're planning for growth in the next year. We're planning for growth in the next 5 years. What's the team that we're going to need, whether that's full-time employees, contract employees, anything else, but what's going to be required to help us achieve X goal at the end of the year, the end of the next 3 years, 5 years, building in the forecast for cash flow and understanding the budgets that we need, the revenue that's needed that goes into this, actually planning backwards, and then being able to understand that this process of hiring, recruiting on average takes 90 days. 40 hours on average to hire one person. We've got to be planning that far in advance. Be in the process of recruiting and hiring your next person now for 90 days from now, and know that the business will continue to support it as you keep them accountable and work on that system, that process of recruitment and hiring, so that it just becomes a turnkey. And as you move through it, it gets easier to an extent because it's systematized. It's a process that's called.
It does get easier. In fact, the first time is probably the most labor intensive. The next time you have all the structure in place, the people are familiar with what happens, and it goes fast. It's really an update that, you know, so we actually did our own marketing process for our own company because of our own pivoting. And I have to say, we're the best clients we've ever had because it went really fast. It was hard, but it went fast. We did our own process for ourselves.
Just want to quickly add, when you're looking at metrics or key performance indicators, they can't just be all quantitative. If you don't have a quality measure, then again, you may fail because you can get customers, are they the right ones, at the right margins, at the right time. People lose sight of that. So I'll make this number, it's a terrible year because they didn't have a quality. And it goes back to your culture and reputation. By the way, if you're not looking at your culture inside when you're hiring, trying to do this after COVID, you need to stop what you're doing because that's prohibiting some people even talking to you because of your reputation.
So if you're using language like, look, Ken, we just need a live body, you're doing it wrong.
Right. Or it's like, you know, they want 25 years of experience from someone just out of college. They're willing to pay minimum wage. They can't figure out why they get hired. Well, there could be a reason behind that because they want a 25-year experienced person. They're not willing to invest in that. That's what I think.
Well, I think all facets of what we're talking about, and the challenge with all of us is the fact that we're so focused. I know myself, I'm focused on real estate daily and with that world. And so I really do need to take time out and think about these other facets of my business. And the problem with most of us, I believe, is that we get so focused on what we do and what we do well, and we're, you know, down the road, and then the next thing we know, we've blown past the time frame that we should have been planning. And it's the whole, you know, ready, fire, aim type of scenario that we're looking at.
So we'll open it up to questions if anybody's got anything, and Bill Combs actually put something in there. There is a way to get around the Apple update with Facebook. He's an expert in Facebook, so just so you know.
We'll need that.
Yeah. We'll bring him for one of the other ones here on how do we sneak around that stuff. All right, let's see here. If we've got any questions, don't have any yet. Go ahead and put them down into the chat function if you've got any questions. Nothing. Let me ask you, Pete. You know, I know you're just a master of kind of figuring out, okay, what are all our key metrics and everything else. You know, for somebody that's a small company that's getting started, what would you say, like the top 3 or so key metrics that they just need to watch?
Gee, that's an easy question.
Yeah.
No,
Let's
it's
put you on the
a great
spot.
question. Right? Now with the caveat that it's gonna vary, right, depending on your business. But the big ones, I mean, this is gonna sound really obvious, right? It's gonna be revenue, top line revenue. It's gonna be profitability. It's gonna be cost of acquisition. And then there are some metrics depending on what tactics you're doing. Whether if you're doing email marketing, there's a set of top level metrics for that. But really just the top level metrics. So maybe if you have 10, you're probably in pretty good shape. Now, this is where I have to mention Vanity Metrics, because this is a thing in my industry that's stealing money from clients, basically. So the client thinks what they want is marketing qualified leads, MQLs, right? Those might look like, hey, somebody downloaded the paper. There's one, right? No, not a lead, okay? But the client thinks it's a lead. The agency knows it's not a lead, but they also know they can generate a whole bunch of those things. And so those are called vanity metrics. It could be, what's another one? I'm kind of
Likes and.
likes
Yeah.
is a great one, right? Even page views, very deceptive.
Yeah.
And so, our page views are up. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what does that have to do with this objective that we set, right? So you using the right metrics, you could tie them pretty directly. But now we have the problem of attribution. Has everybody kind of heard about this? What's funny is when I first heard about it about a year ago, I was like, attribution? What the heck is that? I must be getting old. No, you just rename the same thing that we have always been doing, and that's measurement. Now it's attribution. Where did it come from, right? And the problem is, it doesn't come from just one place. That's not how people buy anymore. In other words, back in the 50s, there were three television stations. You know, you wanted to sell a lot of cigarettes, so you got Fred Flintstone to smoke them, and that was really the strategy right there, and it worked, right? Now we have a million channels. People have all kinds of choices. They're educated, right? So it's gotten a lot more complex. So smaller companies need to narrow that down and think of it as an iterative process where you're testing, you're using a scientific method. You've got your key metrics, and whatever they are, you know, you might start emailing and you're like, we're not getting any response. But if you're looking at your revenue numbers and your profitability numbers, they're going up or down. Was it the email? Was it the social media? Was it the sales team? Does it matter, right? It does to a point, but it's like attribution, don't get fooled by, there are many things that are very difficult to attribute. But with digital marketing, what we're doing is we're measuring the stuff that's easy to measure instead of the stuff that actually matters. And so it's a very deep topic, but I hope that's helpful for somebody.
That's great.
You know, that whole easy to measure thing, I was involved in the internet back when Al Gore invented it. And I'm talking like early 90s, right? So all of a sudden we had all these new metrics, right? And it seemed like, wow, this is fantastic. We can finally get a handle on it. Well, now looking back, it's like, no, we just, some technical people said, hey, we can measure this stuff. And marketers said, holy crap. Now, you know, I mean, and now we've forgotten about the origin. So now it's just like we're measuring likes, we're measuring all these stupid things. But then everybody's wondering, why isn't our marketing working the way it should be? Well, you don't know.
I sit
have
in
no
many
idea.
weekly conversations where I'm getting my metrics back from my social media and increasing likes, you know, engagements, up, down, this and everything like that. And it's like, well, it really doesn't matter because that's week over week. So you could have had a good post that worked well. What does that mean? Just tell me, is it working or is it not working? Well, what do I need to change? I said, you know, like, it's good to show me the data,
Right.
but what does it mean? And it's like, so we have those conversations, and it's exactly what you're saying. They're showing you this data, they're showing you the metrics, but it doesn't mean anything.
So you're not, so, you know, there's a lot of people who, for maybe ego purposes or pride purposes, are not gonna say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, bud, right? And you're not afraid of that. Because you need to understand it. I have to say that most of the time, that's actually on purpose. I don't know what it's called now in the new marketing days, but in the old days, we called that baffling with bullshit. And that
Still the same thing. They just call it something different.
Yeah, I just can't remember what they call it now.
What the new term is, like attribution.
It's called new metrics. Yeah.
It's a lot more
New metrics.
complicated now. You know, but I think it's a huge problem, and it really is a stain on the industry. It makes it harder for everybody. And so, I mean, we really focus on that with our clients and what really matters. And, there could be metrics that are really important to the founder that you might not think are as whatever your department is, whether it's accounting or marketing, you might not think it's important. If it's important to the guy that writes the checks, then yeah, you should be measuring that.
Yeah, and I would say, just from a marketing perspective too, Pete and I talk a lot about marketing, and I mean, one of the big things from a marketing perspective is you can't just give that over to the young kid that, seems to understand it and talk about it. They may have learned this on YouTube 5 minutes ago.
We got a good eye for it.
They got a great eye for it. But some of this requires you to understand what you're trying to get goal-wise from a marketing perspective long before you hire somebody to actually do it. So you need to learn enough to
be able to spot who's for real and
Yep.
not. Or let me introduce this idea. A lot of work that I do is helping companies choose the right talent and the right agencies, because I've run an agency for so long. It doesn't work on me. All right. I know what you're saying. And so that's just a little short assignment. I love doing it because it avoids this problem where every single prospect that comes to me, I would say for the last 5, maybe 6 years, where it's gotten to be 100% of the people, their story's all the same. I worked with these guys. They just totally were a ripoff. I worked with these guys then, and we did that. Didn't work. None of this works. Hey, we tried email. Didn't work. So I'll say, well, what do you mean you tried email? I said, well, we sent an email out. We didn't get any response.
My dad.
And I said,
Well,
how many people did you send to? Like 120. And you sent it once? Yes. One email, one time to 120 people. It didn't work. No kidding.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So there's just a lack of understanding of what marketing isn't a project, it's a process, right? And it's an iterative process. So maybe that's where you start. The results you won't like, but if you keep going and you keep doing it, look, does email marketing work? Is there any doubt? It's, the problem is your email marketing doesn't work, because I bet P&G will tell you that theirs works pretty good.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that make a lot of money on the internet.
And I'm not trying to be, I'm being a little facetious, but it's so common. It's really not fun.
But it goes back to
It's a problem.
It goes back to the whole thing is that especially small business owners, you're focused on the day-to-day running the business. And so you have the disconnect. I mean, I have no doubt that I could probably be a social media expert if I wanted to concentrate on that full time. I have no doubt that I can do that. All right. I mean, you could go through the different things that are out there. I just don't have time. Right. So we get into that scenario where you got to hire somebody or find somebody that can deliver that. Right. And I think the virtual prospect is a really good idea because you can try.
We had a question about
Go 4 people, 4 months if you want.
Yeah.
we had a question about that, just asking you, Tom, what's the difference between employing a CPA and employing a virtual CFO?
Well, from my standpoint, number one, the commitment is that you get the planning. And number two, you get that when you need it. So it's not like, hey, I'm connected to a fee forever, like some SEOs do. I can work on a project or be the lever to make them better. I've done things as simple for me as the bank calls me, help my customer with paperwork so we can loan them money.
Yeah.
They're busy playing whack-a-mole in their business and the paperwork's still there. And a week later, they have their line of credit.
Yeah.
I'm done. Okay. So that is, here's the need, here's the tactics, go get it done. Okay. So I think that is the difference. And so I also try to bring the experience from other clients that they can learn from. So one of the things I ask on the marketing side, because I'm not a marketing expert, tell me about your revenue, new customers or clients. They look at me, how do I get to that? Well, your system doesn't separate that for you. So you've got a flaw in your accounting system that will help you to understand what's happening. Spend a lot of money on marketing, no new customers. Well, empirically, maybe that's a fail. I don't have to be the expert. I see. Now, there's nothing wrong with focusing on client retention, but when that's it, you better watch that carefully because you have no new growth. So that's some things I sprinkle in for KPI. Maybe we should have that as an indicator. You're right. And so then we can have a way to test. It's a way to keep track. And that may be in your business, one new customer is a lot, depends on the size, but to not track it at all. So I can come in on a project and be that virtual person remotely, whatever it needs to be for time for it, or I can do the retainer month to month. I've done that for years at a time. It's based on their need. I can bring that expertise. Used to do this for public companies. And the timeframe we had to do that consulting, HR couldn't even get us a login in the 4 weeks needed to get the job done. We were already done. We got dropped in out of the black helicopter, did the work, we're gone. So that's how virtual works, because you get the expertise you need when you need it on the spot. And it's not theoretical, there's a report, read it, it's get it done. It's get the thing accomplished.
Well, it gives you a chance to road test that person, right? And then it gives you the ability to figure out what it is that they're delivering that you can hire for at a later date if that's what you choose to do. So,
And some of those assignments have been, Tom, thanks for what you've done. We need a controller now. Help us vet that person, because they're trying to get their feet wet with something financial without doing the CFO, but they need something. So that can be a part of that process.
Yeah, well, I would assume too, you're also that one that can help vet, all right, my bookkeeper solid, or is, do we need to look for a different bookkeeper at this point?
And it's not just skill set. We talked about the culture. Is it a culture fit? Because, you can create a situation you'll never hire the bookkeeper controller, because their culture is no one will take that job. Because that's why it goes into. So the owner has to do it, and it doesn't get done. That's the bottom line.
well, I know we were sitting having a beer not too long ago, and we got to talking about, tax planning and all the stuff that goes with that. And I know Tom brought up some stuff about planning and stuff in the future that I was like, the light bulb was going off in my mind about, wait a minute, we need to talk more about this, because I'm like, I'm focused on the next deal, closing and taking care of my clients. And I'm like going, and I've been working literally over the past, I guess, 2+ years now, trying to change my business model and back that up so that I can take advantages, reduce my taxes and, plan strategically. I mean, one of the things I just found out the other day is that I guess this year and next year we can do 100% on our food purchases. So is that true? That's what I understand. So
2020 was 100%,
yeah.
and they're working on making it, that continuous, because
So
it saves some restaurants, right? I mean, think about it. We're supporting restaurants while we're marketing,
So from my standpoint as a small business owner, I mean, I can do events and things like that involving food, and I can both help out business owners and things like that, but take care of my clients, and I get to write it off 100%. That's huge, little things like that make a difference.
I believe music is right off of 100%.
It is.
Just saying.
And food. I think that's the making.
Entertainment, yes, meals and entertainment.
Exactly.
You can actually, yes, if you do that right.
Oh, yeah.
If you do that wrong, no, but I mean, that's why you do the planning of the event.
My company does these events, right? I wanted to shoot something over to Tanner, because a lot of people don't understand what a coach is and what the value of a coach is. And we're covering a lot of ground just in these last few minutes. So if people are feeling overwhelmed, you should be, number one. I can't operate practically without a coach. I mean, I'll admit that. I'm not, I'm sitting up here. I know the best practices. I don't always do them. I am as guilty as anybody. So tell us a little bit about, so action coaching, a little different than dude who lost his job and is now a coach.
A little bit different, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I appreciate the comment there on the necessity behind having a coach in general. And for full transparency, congruency, I also have a coach. My dad has a coach. We employ coaches, invest in coaching, because it's the accountability.
Right.
It's the pieces that, yes, we all may take these pieces of knowledge and understand the different areas and how to guide others in doing this, but being able to do it ourselves can be a challenge.
Well, because you're close. Now, again, we got the post-COVID effect, right? We're inundated with issues, right? Big part of coaching, cut to the heart.
Yeah.
Get to the thing.
Forest for the trees.
Yes,
Oh,
and
that's-
it comes down to getting out of that state of overwhelm. And yes, we want a little bit of what we call perturbation, the pressure that causes change, because at the end of the day, in order for us to grow, we need to change. But being able to take that step back, slow down to speed up, which is a little bit what we talked about before, and understand what is the highest priority that's going to get us 1% better moving to tomorrow. So we're 90% better by the time we get 90 days from now. And that continually compounds over time. So from a the coaching aspect, we work on the planning, we work on the motivation and kind of coaching accountability piece. We look on education. At the end of the day, what we do is business re-education. Most of the things that we've talked about up here in this panel and a lot of things that we talk about in coaching, it's not really new. A lot of it's been around forever, but being able to look at it from a.
Just new names.
Yeah, exactly. Or look at it from a different perspective, continue to grow and learn as individuals. And being able to put that into practice and have somebody that can help hold you accountable on a day-to-day basis. And there's so many different ways to do it from the coaching. So yes, for you to lean back on the first thing that you said, no, you're not the ones that just got out of one job, decided to become coaches the next day. As I said in my intro, Action Coach is a global franchise, been around for 28 years, tested in 82 different countries, across all industries, all sizes. At the end of the day, it's the framework, it's the accountability that comes behind it. And at the end of the day, this is our full-time job to help transform lives.
It is not just coffee, you're working a program, because I've gone through a lot of coaches and a lot of them were about hanging out for coffee.
Yeah.
And then the good ones, Rafe Beeson, awesome coach, has a methodology, right? And so part of that is just reminding me of what the heck we talked about last week, and did we even do that? And those are rough conversations sometimes.
Yeah.
So the good ones are like a drill sergeant, because they stay with it, right? They really do, they stay with that.
Yeah.
Well, and it is that accountability. I mean, I've coached people and, you get I had a really busy week. I don't care. I mean, especially when you coach in a group, everybody else was busy last week too. Get your stuff done. This is your
We're all
responsibility.
busy. That's the challenge. So, that's why we're having this conversation. How important it is.
But I get to work with really smart people and they're good at what they do. And they go, Tom, I don't like what you do. Tell me. Or I don't have the time, or I didn't do it and I know I should. So it's not the intelligence factor, it's what their focus is. And so that's why we can be a lever in that regard, as a virtual product delivery, because they can pick up the phone, email, whatever, and get that answer they needed before.
Yes. We talked about a successful business being a business that is commercial, profitable enterprise that ultimately works without you in the business every day. So I've heard throughout this conversation, I'm so busy doing the business. Many of us out there are so busy in the business that we can't do X, Y, and Z. So being able to pull these lever points of those of us up here, those of you that have folks in your network that you can hire, you can recruit, you can bring on additional team members when it comes to that standpoint to help build the business and grow the business. So ultimately, as a business owner that got into business for the thing that they actually enjoy doing, maybe it's I really love doing the numbers and that's what I'm passionate about. Then get to the point where the business has grown so that you can spend time doing that. And at the end of the day, if you want to take 3 weeks off because it's been stressful, your business can continue to operate. So use the people in your network, leverage them, leverage the folks up here on this panel. It's so powerful when you can just leverage in your business.
Well, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you all coming out here. It was a great discussion. It was a fun discussion. What followed, just one last thing here. We had one question. So from a marketing standpoint, are you stating that meetups, social engagements, exchanging business cards, follow-up are pretty much gone? All marketing is social media, and what aspect gives it the best return?
Whoa. How about spiking there, setting the ball. Spike. Whoever you are, that's probably my friend out there. No, that's a great, it's a great question because we seem to be saying, look, virtual is it, right? No, it's not. It's, you know what? It's time to get out. It's time to meet in person. We're all here in person. I would much prefer that everybody online was here in person. I think that if you do that in a strategic way, that is probably the most powerful. You can't connect with people the way on Zoom, the way you can in person, period. Even if you have to yell, like I think when we first met in person, it was pretty much yelling because the room was so loud. But it counts, right? Can I plug my next event?
Sure.
Stories from the Road at the
Do it.
Saxon Pub, November 27th. Networking with a little show. We got our guest is the most recorded contemporary blues artist in America, Mark Kasnoff, and it's just a blast. And we've been doing these for 5 years. And they are networking events, and it's given us our best years in the history of our company by participating in these networking events. And then that goodness, to use Steve Harper's term, has rippled out to a lot of other people. And so they come to these events, and we're hoping to bring the big one back too. But I can't say much more about that. But this one is a very a really nice, laid back Austin experience with Grammy level players, and we just have a ball. And we don't know what we're going to play, and we don't know who's going to show up. And so,
But everybody seems to show up. So
23 sold out in a row.
To that, I guess the answer to the question is to use an old word, diversification.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
think,
right.
I mean, you gotta have balance across all the platforms, and part of the problem is some of this stuff just isn't trackable. I mean, it's top of mind awareness and
You
things
can't.
like that. So, I mean, I think it's diversification. You can't, I mean, there's nothing that, in my mind, that takes place or overrides person-to-person interaction and getting in a room and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you can't augment it with the other things that we're talking about. And frankly, if it came across as we were really selling social media as the only way, that wasn't, I don't think any of our intent. So,
Yeah, I think it's an awareness thing. You know, I look at it, all of us basically sell pretty high ticket items. That's not gonna get sold as a transaction online. You know, they're not gonna go online and go, oh, Pete, I
Right,
want you
yeah.
to be my marketing guy. Or,
Beyond-
oh, Tanner, I want you to be my growth coach. We all have to work that personal relationship, and
Yeah, the online relationship, as much as we like to think it's the same, it isn't as a personal relationship. I always just say, you know, the answer when it comes to marketing tactics is all of the above. You know, you better start with your budget and go from there, not the other way around, which is what many clients want to do. They want to say, want to do all this stuff, how much? No, it works the other way. What's the budget you have to work with? How do we allocate that, stretch it as far as we can get? Ignore the things that we don't think are going to work. Be flexible, because we might get it, you know. But what can you do? And do as much as you can. That's the idea, because you want people to hear about you from many different places, social media, maybe. Actually, Tom and I, we first heard of each other on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
The next thing we did was we met in person.
Correct.
Then we've had a phone call.
Yep.
And I'm seeing you again.
Yes.
And of course, we talked back and forth.
Absolutely.
Look at, I mean, there's at least 5 different contexts in media. And so, and we're just getting started, right? And so that's what it looks like. And I don't know if we'll do business together. It doesn't matter, because that's not what we're getting to know each other.
but it's also that it's that mental Rolodex of, you know, you're talking
I
to
gotta
a
go.
client and it's like, God, we're just struggling with our finances. We can't find the cash flow. Hey, let me introduce you to Tom. You know, I just don't have a clue of where I'm going with my business and all this. Well, let me introduce you to Tanner and Andy. They were just phenomenal with that stuff. And, you know, having that small group of people around you that, you know, if I hand somebody to Tom, it's going to be the best experience ever. If I hand somebody to Andy and Tanner, if I hand somebody to Pete, it's going to be the best experience possible. You know, that it's the best person I can think of to send you to.
And in my practice, it's so random. Tom, I need a
Yeah.
plumber. They know I'm not a plumber. The point is, fill in the blank. I mean, they have a need.
You know all these people.
But they
Just tell me who to go
trust
to.
you
Yeah.
to get them to the spot they need to be. That's the key. So that's what, you know, beyond the social media, meeting in person, starting to build that.
Yeah.
But that's critical.
You wouldn't even believe what the job description for a realtor is. I cannot tell you what I've done, who I've hired. Well, you know, it's just amazing to get my clients to the goal line. So, I mean, it's, you know, my first transaction, I actually cut a guy's fence, part of his fence off, so it didn't come in contact with his house before he even bought it. So I'm like, I'm gonna get arrested for this.
Like you're out there with a saw.
Yeah, with a saw. It's like, it's not be a quarter inch away from the house because you could be conducive to insects. And I had to do that for a VA appraisal, you know, and it was like, and that got the deal done. And I'm like, going, I may end up in jail.
Richard and his chainsaw.
There you go. And for me, it's like, no, you need a banker, not a bank.
Yeah.
And here's the banker.
Yeah.
Because the
You need
bank
to
is
talk
not
to
going to help you get the loan. You
Yeah.
need the banker. So that's that beyond the social media where you just go on live. Just
Well,
your
and then,
situations.
let me throw this last thing in there, and I'm gonna shut up for the day.
For the day.
So maybe not.
For this,
So one of the big questions is, should we be, how much time should we be putting in on social media, right? Well, first of all, you should be using automation, right? You should have enough of your act together to be able to have someone else at least creating the drafts, you approve them, so you don't have to be on social media all the time. But why? Why, right? So you just said it, and you said it from our standpoint where I know the guy, right? If I'm on the other side of the table as the potential prospect, and I think I need somebody who's a coach, and Tanner's been really active in my sphere, and he's starting to own the idea of the action coach, you're gonna come to mind first, right? Doesn't mean you win the deal, but you got a real good chance of winning the deal because you're first, right? Or I'm gonna think of real estate, I'm gonna think about who's the virtual chief finance officer, right? I'm trying to, these events that I do, they are for a very, very specific purpose, is to position myself. It's been a little bit confusing because people think I'm a guitar player, but what's interesting, that was a big concern of mine. You and I talked about this years ago, right? And guess what really happens? The first thing they go is look me up on LinkedIn. Doesn't say a thing about music, right? So they find out who I am, but they meet me in a different context, but it gives us this platform to be constantly in front of everybody with a very specific message over and over and over again, so that I can own a concept or a position in their minds, so that hopefully when they think, we need a marketing guy. In fact, you know what? Don't hire somebody before you talk to Pete.
Yeah.
Right? If
Yeah,
I can
at
get
least
them to
have a
think that,
conversation with Pete
At
first.
least have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm that guy.
It's
Right?
top of mind.
And it just takes, reach and frequency and a commitment. So it's not that you get on social media, a couple of weeks, boy, I just haven't had time. Doesn't work like that. Okay, if that's how it works for you, then don't expect much. It's a commitment. I film a show every week with Jason Myers, and it's hard. But every week the camera comes on and I have to talk about something.
Well, the other part of that too is it just can't be automated. That's
No,
the other
no,
thing.
it really
If you just
Not
turn on the
totally.
switch and it's automated, you're not engaging on that platform. So you do have to be on that platform to some degree.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just a matter
and when I say automated, what that really means is because I do my own social media, I don't actually outsource that. What it means in practice is I'm sitting down and writing 50 thoughtful posts in one sitting. And it might take 4 or 5 hours, right? And so that's how you do social media. What people do instead is they'll get a junior level person who puts vapid crap out on the feeds. They're there and they're out there and it's pointless
posting,
and worthless, right? Doesn't bring value to people. So that doesn't count either, right? You could have high frequency and big reach and say the dumbest stuff and get nothing. Right? You have to put effort, thought in it. And I'm sorry, there's no other way. I hate breaking that to business people. Like, I can't even take on anything else. Hey, guess what? You own a business. Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
You still have to take it on.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you coming in today. This is the beginning of several of these, so just keep your eyes out on the social media, on our LinkedIn, through our group, and hopefully we'll see you guys back here on another show going forward. So thanks a lot. Have a great day.